All right, here we are back with the Atom controller, and the next thing we're going to explore is the pad modes, or are the pad modes, however you want to say it. If you look to my right, you will actually see this nice little custom mapping that I made up of all of the different pads, their modes, and their colors. Now, there's a couple of conditions that the Atom goes into, whether Studio One is open or closed or being used in a different DAW. So what you're about to see here, you can see that I got Studio One closed. If I go to my classroom right there, I'm all closed and I'm ready to get going with this here. So you can also look at this as the mode when you're working with a different DAW. So when you hit the setup button right here, you can see that the pads on the Atom now match what you see in the chart. The green pads are unavailable when Studio One is open and being used in Studio One. So in this mode and for third-party DAWs, these are the settings that you can make when you are in this mode. Remember, Studio One is closed. We don't have Impact open or anything. So this is kind of our default mode. So again, once you go ahead and fire up the Atom, the pads are gonna be blue, and the persona symbol is going to be green, indicating it is not connected to Studio One. Okay, let's go into the setup mode. Boom. Here we go. So now our pads on the Atom match what's on the right there in my chart. So if you look across the bottom, the green pads, which are normally not available when Studio One is open, you have the two different modes for playing, and that is the MIDI mode for the drums. That's the default mode when you open up Impact. Then you have the keyboard mode, which is in Studio One, and third-party DAWs, which would be for keyboard instruments like Presence or Contact if you're in a third-party DAW. And then, of course, my favorite is Mardi Gras. And you hit that button and you get all this little flashing deal here. So when you put your fader port or you put your Series 3 mixer into Mardi Gras mode, you can pretty much have a party with these three things actually activated. So let me go ahead and go out of that mode. You can see now we're back to the basic blue pads because Studio One is closed. I'm going to keep reminding you of that. And then, of course, in the corner here, you got this nice little panic button here. And, of course, it's not going to save your life, but it will shut off any MIDI instruments that are sustaining. If you're having a problem with some instruments whose sustain doesn't let go at the end of a performance, you can just hit the panic button and all of those will go off. Okay, so there we go. I let go of the setup button. I'm going to hit it one more time, and now all of the second row are purple. These are your MIDI assignments, and we're going to go through all of these as we go through the different scenes and different plugins in Studio One. But for now, you can turn all of your MIDI commands off with that mode, and then you can go ahead and go into a MIDI CC mode with the second one. Then you have your aftertouch mode. This is going to be your pressure sensitivity. And then you have the channel pressure mode, and this is the default that it's going to come in. So if you don't want any kind of pressure sensitivity, you're going to want to have to go ahead and hit that off. That means all aftertouch and things like that are going to be off and deactivated when you're using it in Studio One or in any other kind of a DAW. So the default one is here, the channel pressure right here, and basically that's just going to go ahead and give you the trigger ability for all of your pads in Impact with Studio One and whatever you have it connected to third-party wise. Okay, so the second row is going to be our pressure threshold. So now this is going to determine what your how hard you have to push the pad for things like the pressure sense. So if you want to be able to get from 0 to 127 with a light touch, you're going to go here. If you want to make sure that you have to really press it to get a nice, slow, gradual swing for the pressure sensitivity, then you would actually go ahead and activate that one. The medium one is the one that I like, even though the default is high. It's a nice light touch. And then you have the ability here. Oh, my finger gets tired holding that down. So, so with this button right here, you can see in my chart that it has an orange mode and a red mode. So in the red mode, it's reversed. It's 127 to 0. That means that when you actually initially hit the pad, it will be at its loudest point, and the harder you push it goes to 0. And if it's in the orange mode, it's just the opposite. So this gives you the ability to really come up with some creative pressure sensibilities when you're actually working. Sensibilities, I think that's the right word. Pressure sensitivity when you're actually working with things like maybe even note repeat, or if you have the pressure sensitivity assigned to something like a wave or volume. You could actually go ahead and press it. When you press the key, the volume will go up and down along with triggering the sound. So it's kind of like a dual mode. And again, this will be a lot more understandable, a lot more understandable once we actually start getting into the actual testing and the functions as we actually open up drum kits and things. So then last but not least, the top row here, you can see this here is flashing to the tap tempo. Let me let go of that button there for a second there. There we go. So it's to the tap tempo. So if I go ahead and go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, now you can see that thing is tapping to that slow beat. And if I go ahead, I think it's 4 taps. So bump, 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 and there you go. Now it's tapping to that tempo. So this is going to be mainly useful if you're working with a DAW other than Studio One, and you'll be able to tap that out. This is otherwise disabled when Studio One is open because there's a whole different way to do the tempo when Studio One is open. And then, of course, you have the strike velocities, the 3 red pads. Let me let go of that button there. So if you look over here, you can see the 3 red pads across the top. That is pad 13, 14, and 15. And these are going to determine how hard you have to hit the pads to actually get some velocity sensitivity out of it. So you have a soft touch here, which means that if you want a lot of dynamics, you're going to want to choose this one. So you've got to hit the pad pretty hard to actually get the loudest sound. I know it says soft, but this is to get the loudest sound with the hardest hit. And then this is a very easy, you don't have to hit it that hard to get all your velocity sense. And of course, I prefer the center one, which is the medium, and that seems to work really well with things like MT powered drums or the new SSD5 free drum plugin. It works really nice with dynamics. And again, we're going to go through all of that when we start doing our testing. Okay, so that is the default mode when Studio One is closed or you are using a third-party DAW, something like Cubase or Pro Tools or whatever you're going to use it with. So now what we're going to do is we are going to open Studio One. So let me go ahead and get the Studio One open. We're going to go ahead and go to our classroom here, and there's Studio One. Hey, let's bring in a little thing there of the Atom. So when you open Studio One, you can see now that the whole condition of this thing has changed. All of the pads are actually blank, indicating that we are hooked up to Studio One because our icon is blue, but we're waiting for a song to open in Studio One so that the Atom can be used. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and create a new song, and we're going to click OK. And once the song is open, now you can see that the pads are back to the blue, but now the icon is also blue, telling you again that we're hooked up to Studio One. I'm going to be doing some repeating with some of this stuff because it's really important that you understand what modes you're in. So, okay, so now we don't have any VST instrument open. So, of course, the big thing that this is supposed to work the best with, and it does, is impact. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag impact. I'm just going to drag an empty impact. No pads assigned. The track is armed, but you might be wondering, okay, why didn't my pad conditions change even though impact is open? Well, I'm going to show you why. I don't have impact chosen as the actual external device. I've got the PS49. I don't use all inputs because I have a lot of MIDI routing for other gear that actually I can use as an external device. So I have to select the PS49 directly, which is the keyboard. But if I want to go ahead and start using the Atom, I can do that. Now, look, now the pads are white. The pads are white, indicating that I have no sounds put on the pads in impact. So if I was to disarm the track, you can see the pads go back to blue. If I arm the track, then the pads reflect what is going on in impact. Now, since there is no kit in impact, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to drop this default down. Here are the MVP loops that you guys saw in the last video that you can download and install from your account once you register the Atom. So let's see. Let's go with MVP. Let's choose one of the kits. Let's choose this one here. There we go. Now, notice what happened to the Atom. Now, the color of the pads on the Atom reflect what's happening here in Impact. So you can audition sounds that way, and you can see that it goes, the communication between Studio One and the Atom goes both ways. So when I click on a pad, you can see the pad flicker on the Atom. And then, of course, if I hit the pads on the Atom, you can see that the pads activate, and you've got the nice pad chase function that when you hit a pad, the waveform for that sample is displayed as you hit the pads. It's kind of like a follow or a note chase. Very, very cool. Okay, so now we know that that is hooked up. So when the Atom is hooked up to a drum kit, there are some default settings for the knobs up on top. Let's go through that a little bit. So let's see here. Let's go ahead and pick a pad. I'm going to pick the kick drum right here. Turn that up a little bit so you guys can hear it. So for this pad here, I have the ability to rotate one of the knobs just like this. Ooh, you know what I got to do? I'm going to go up here. You have to make sure that your focus device is set to the Atom. Just like that. Let's see if this works. I'm going to go ahead and go like this. Yeah, there we go. So once you have the, I always forget to hit this. Once you have the focus device changed to the Atom for Impact, now you have some default settings for your knobs. The first knob is your amplitude. So if you look down here, you can actually see when I turn that first knob, it's the volume of the pad that I hit. The second knob is the pan. The third knob is the pitch. These are the four most used functions that you're going to be using when you're actually programming a song, at least by default from Personas. These can always be changed, and I'll be showing you how to do that soon. And then the last one is, what is the last one? The last one is the decay, so that you can actually change how long the pad goes. If it has a long sustain in the sample itself, you can actually adjust that like that. Hopefully you can see where my orange mouse is down here following the adjustment. So again, you have amplitude, you have the pan. Next knob is the pitch or the tuning. You can actually call that tuning too. There is a tune knob there, but, you know, the pitch will actually give you steps like in a tuning. And then the tune knob is like for the micro, you know, to really get it into the right pitch. And then, of course, the last mode is the decay for the selected pad. And as you go through, you can actually see, like for this pad, I can go ahead and pan it left. Then for the next pad, I can go ahead and pan it right. Then for the next pad, I can actually go ahead and tune this up a little bit. And there you have it. There are the pad modes, and there is just so much more to expand on with actually using some of these pad modes and being able to make changes to your drum kits and so on and so forth. So stay tuned for the next video, and I will see you there.